Cool. All right, we've got a couple of minutes till we kick off. Just have some housekeeping things to do for everyone in the audience. So come on in, come on out the front, that way we can point you out and ask you questions directly. Right, so I'd like to kick off with an acknowledgement of country for today. And I'll respectfully acknowledge the people of the Yugambeh language region, the traditional owners of the land on which we all meet here today. And I pay my respects to their elders, present, past, and those that are emerging as well. And I would particularly like to acknowledge my wife and her family, who are descendants of this land, and thank them for all they have taught me about their culture, and extend my respect to any First Nations people here with us today. Right, so just a quick reminder, there's an app. I don't have my phone with me, but there's an app. I would normally hold it up as a prop. There's an app you can download. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can use the app. I will be roaming around with the microphone as well if you do have any questions. So if you put your hand up towards the end, I'll run over and get my steps up. And I usually do like a ChatGPT intro. And Meg was saying, she was presenting a little while back, and she said, I really enjoyed it. I said, oh, well, I'm not going to do that, but I did have a joke. I asked ChatGPT, and I said, hey, give me the cheesiest joke about disinformation campaigns. Are you ready? All right, so I asked the hacker why they loved disinformation campaigns. They said, because why hack one person? We can let Facebook do it for you. That's pretty good, I think. It's not as cheesy as I thought it was going to be. Anyway, definitely enough from me. So I'd like to introduce the next two speakers. So we've got Meg Tapia and Ross Patterson, and they're going to be talking about why disinformation is a cybersecurity threat. And I read the bio. I won't read out the entire bio of the presentation, but I am really looking forward to it because it's quite intriguing. So can we have a warm round of applause for Meg and Ross as they make their way up on stage, please?
Thank you. Hey everybody, I'm Meg Tapia. I'm Managing Director of a boutique national security company in Canberra, Novexus. Ross?
Hey, good morning. Good morning, folks. Excuse my incredibly loud microphone. My name's Ross Patterson. I'm a senior intelligence consultant at Recorded Future, and I do a lot of work around disinformation with a lot of our government clients.
Yeah, and we're both very passionate about this topic, which is why we've decided to partner up and just have a conversation around what the threat landscape looks like at the moment. Now, you might have been intrigued by the title, which is Pink Slime, McDonald's and Rare Earths, and you might be thinking, what on earth do these things have to do with disinformation? What do they have to do with each other? We're going to run through some case studies. That's what these are. There's a lot that we could talk about, but I am going to try to keep to time. Okay. Let me borrow this. Right. So the purpose of today, you would have seen in the bio, is to really give you a sense of what's happening in the landscape. So an understanding of what is happening in terms of disinformation and the role of cybersecurity in defending it, but also insights into the various actors and methods. And this is going to be by no means comprehensive. It is going to be really almost superficial. There is so much that we could talk about. And also some practical strategies that you can take away with you. Michelle McGuinness said in her presentation earlier that cyber is a risk issue and a leadership issue. I completely agree, and so what we want to do is equip you to go to your board and to explain to them, at least at some level, why disinformation is part of that and why it needs to be treated as a risk for every company. Okay. Interactive time, feel free to come forward. I love a bit of interactive time. Can anyone tell me, or just have a guess, 20 Australian dollars, the cost of influence, this is a study from Cambridge Online, how many comments does 20 Australian dollars buy you in social media? 1,000, good guess. Anybody else? Up the back? 100,000. Whoa, that's a lot. I have so many comments on my cat pictures. It actually can buy you 100 comments. Comments are really hard to do because they require a lot more effort. Can you guess how much 20 Australian dollars, how many new followers does it buy you? Okay, up the front again. 20, okay, anyone else? Yes? 100. Any other guesses at the back? 50, okay. You're all a little under. It's 1,000. You get 1,000 new followers for 20 Australian dollars. Followers are easier to do, right? That's why, and they can follow many people. Comments are a little bit harder. How many likes on a post? Now that I've posted my cat video and I want it to go viral and I've got a spare $20, how many likes can I buy online for 20 Australian dollars? Up the front again. 10,000, okay. 5,000. Any other guesses? This feels like an auction. 3,000. You were right at the front. It was, in fact, 10,000. You can get 10,000 Australian dollars. The cost of influence varies across the world, okay? It's much cheaper in Russia, the US and the UK than it is in Japan and Australia. And the reason for that is because in Japan and Australia, you have to show identity, some kind of driver's license, Medicare card. You have to prove your identity in order to get a SIM card. And so it's much harder and it's at higher cost to be able to create a persona online. Okay, I'm telling you this because while that's the case here in Australia, that's not the case in other parts of the world, and the internet is global. It's not an Australian internet. Okay, how much does $100 get you? Just have a guess about, you know now how much $20 can get you in terms of, you can buy likes, you can buy comments, you can buy followers. If you had $100, what could you buy? Triple that. Yeah, I mean, 5 times that. But also, you can buy a fully automated, self-generating, AI-powered fake news website. This is what's called pink slime. You can hop online and for $100 you can pay someone to create a website for you, and they can connect it to generative AI, any type, including ChatGPT, and for $100 you can create a news site. And this is problematic because this is the low cost of entry that Michelle also referred to, and we'll talk a little bit in our case studies how some of these things are being used. The point here is it's cheap, the cost of entry is low. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the online environment, right? So what are the fundamentals that are causing this to occur? So fundamentally, social media platforms and the internet writ large has neglected safety and quality over money and profit. That's the root of the problem here. But there's a range of other factors that sit around this, right? Things like inadequate content moderation. We've all, I'm sure, heard the news around some of that's happening. The race to monetize interactions, gamification, all of this is contributing to an internet that has very low barriers to entry and lots of gaps, right? Lots of gaps in this environment because of this pursuit over profit instead of safety and quality. Disinformation is a problem, but it is not the only problem. There's a lot of problems with what's happening in the online environment. So we're just bringing up one, and I'm sure this is a horrible slide with all the red, but it is important to be aware about what is happening in that online environment. Okay, I love this word. Does anyone know what that means? Yeah?
Just online service getting worse over time.
Yes.
Netflix started out with you pay more and getting the quality of the program.
Perfect, because that's exactly right. So it's the gradual deterioration of the quality of the internet over time. We paid for a service when, was it Facebook started in like 2005? Is that right? And it's gradually declined, and all of the services have gradually declined. And that is why the Macquarie Dictionary chose, and shitification, I love that I can get up here and say that, as its word of the year in 2024. Oxford Dictionary chose the word brain rot as its word of the year, which is, I think, telling you something about what's going on. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Ross to talk about what is the problem, what's happening.
Thank you. You keep the clicker, there's the rest to go wrong then. So, hey folks, thanks very much for having us along today. I would like to say that Meg and I both come from what we call tech-adjacent backgrounds, as in neither of us are directly technologists, neither of us code, but we've worked alongside technology for years, and I, with my sort of intelligence background, have worked with disinformation as a concept for a number of years, and I've seen how technology has driven this. So there is absolutely a human element to this, but our conjecture today, our assertion is that there is absolutely a technology-based strain to disinformation, and cyber is an enabler to that. So sitting behind the problem is the fact that, in the nicest way, people are jerks. And we've been jerks to each other for a couple of millennia now, possibly a bit more, and we've been lying, deceiving, and thieving from each other absolutely pretty much since language was invented. Now, all technology has done is supercharge that. So I would say that our current world is increasingly messy, multipolar. We have new social media platforms being spun up at a rate quicker than we can realistically keep up with and monitor, let alone the channels, personas, and information on those channels. We have increasingly states getting involved with information operations online, utilizing that technology for their nefarious purposes, and information is now freely flowing across state boundaries in a way that we really can't even monitor. In 2023, the UK House of Lords did an investigation into the 2016 elections, and CopyCop, who are a Russian disinformation mob, getting involved in interfering with American democracy. Now, the assessment at that time, in 2016, was that CopyCop, Russia, spent about $20 million on that campaign. And we've already given you some figures to play with so you can see the absolute scale, even back then, of what they were achieving. So, in 2016, $20 million, and that got them 1,000 seeding accounts and 1,000 amplification accounts, and all of the activities that went on around that to attack democracy in the West. At the time of the House of Lords investigation, only 7 years later, that figure had reduced to a couple of $1,000s. So when you look at the figures on screen and the amount of money that is going to be plowed into disinformation over the next few years, you can see the scale of the problem, the reach and the penetration of disinformation. It's going to be absolutely awash and everywhere. And the end result that I really want to drive home is effectively information entropy. We are degrading trust in systems, we're degrading trust in democracy, in news, and even trust in each other, which is unfortunately the end result of a lot of this disinformation.
Mm-hmm. Totally, yes. So what does that mean for you? So what we've got up here is, what is the impact in terms of this challenge for each of these layers of society? What does it mean for corporates? What does it mean for society writ large? And what does that mean in terms of the cyber landscape specifically? How big is this problem? What's the level of concern? So you guys are all concerned, or at least interested, which is why you're in this room, but you're not alone. So there's studies that have been undertaken that have mapped the level of concern globally, and as you can see, Australia is kind of somewhere in the middle, where we think it's a problem, maybe we're not quite sure how to deal with it, we know disinformation matters, but we're not fully concerned. There's other parts of the world which are deeply, deeply concerned. You can see there's parts of South America that have gotten all the way up to that really bright yellow in terms of the population, the percentage of the population that's really concerned about disinformation. But there is no one really in the world except maybe, I don't know, that teeny little spot up there, right? Somewhere in Central Asia. Maybe it's a lack of internet access, I don't know, where disinformation isn't seen as actually a really fundamental threat. So, we've been throwing around these words. Let's define. Just very quickly, we want a baseline for everybody. Part of the problem that we have is that we say disinformation and we create this bucket and everything goes into it. Everything that's bad and lying and fake news, etc., goes into the disinformation bucket. But there's nuance, okay? And it's important to be aware that there is nuance. So what's that nuance? The fundamental of disinformation is that it's deceptive. It's intended to deceive you, okay? And there usually is an element of it which is covert or clandestine or intended to hide who is the true source of that information that is being fed to you. Misinformation is another word that gets thrown around, but it's different. And what's different about it is that it's just misleading. It wasn't intended to deceive you. The person who sent that to you, the person who's producing that content, believes it to be true, right? So we've all heard the old adage about, you know, the uncle at the party who says something and you're like, oh, it's disinformation. What he's doing is misinformation, right? Maybe because he believes it to be true. It doesn't actually fall into that disinformation category. And these semantics are important when we look at who are the threat actors. The third bucket is relatively new, and it's malinformation. That is material that is real, but has been recycled and miscontextualized in order to support a particular agenda, and I'll give you some examples. Now, this here from the CSI Library in New York is the best that I've seen in terms of showing the relationship between these three. And in terms of malinformation, because I think sometimes that's the hardest to get our heads around, here's a couple of examples. So what you see here is a photograph. You can see they're the same photograph. An original photograph from, I think it might have been 2006, from a conflict in 2006, that's been repurposed in 2021 in relation to the conflict in Gaza. This second one I actually just put up there this morning because I found it on the ABC News and I thought it was fascinating. But this is a video. You can watch it online on ABC News. Type in ABC News misinformation Peter Dutton, and this video will pop up in one of the stories. And in this video, you remember Peter Dutton made a statement about not wanting to have the Indigenous flag alongside the Australian flag at press conferences, right? In this video, it is him saying those things, which he did, right? It's the same video, but it's been dubbed in Chinese, in his voice, with a statement underneath that says that if elected, he will ban the Indigenous flag. That is a miscontextualization of what's going on or what originally happened, okay? Okay, let's talk about campaigns real quick. Okay, these are the 4 fundamental elements of a disinformation campaign. It's pretty simple, right? It's been around forever. This is the same model that's been used through wars, right? Operation Fortitude, you can Google all of that, gives you a really great example of the way that disinformation campaigns, influence operations, were used in wartime in order to achieve strategic advantage. So, the objective, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? Who's your target? Who are you trying to influence? You need to have an element of obfuscation, so there needs to be clandestinity or covertness to hide who's really behind it. And your vector. How are you going to get the message to your target audience? So if this has been around forever, then why are we talking about this now? Dude, it's the internet. I did tell some people last night that I was going to have, I forget his name, oh my God, Mel Gibson as a slide. I do like the memes. But this is what's going on, right? It's the access, the speed, the scale, the velocity that's making this a challenge. Okay, fundamentals. Who are the threat actors? This is very high level, okay? You can really drill down, and that's what Recorded Future does. They will drill down into all of the specifics of this. But you've got 3 fundamental categories. You've got your state actors and proxies. Now, I put them together because the proxies are effectively doing what the state actors want. And yes, Russia is very, very good, very, very leading, but there's other countries, and I'm sure, you know, you've heard them as well, but, you know, China's leading the way, North Korea and Iran, and there are others as well. The second group of people, or threat actors, is who I call the true believers. These are people who are more likely to engage in mis rather than disinformation, but they genuinely believe the things that they're spreading, and it causes information chaos. And the final group is the financially motivated. This is really important because programmatic advertising is creating an environment where disinformation is lucrative. You can make money out of this. If I was in any other profession, I would be taking my $100 and create like a you know,
Fake news
invest $1,000, create 10 websites and just make money from programmatic advertising. Please don't go and do that. But that's what I would be doing. So how are these groups interacting together? Because this is where the problem becomes enriched. So state actors reach out to the financially motivated, asking for content to be made. That content is returned to the state actors. It's given to the proxies to distribute through their very large networks. It's connected back to the financially motivated actors who've got programmatic advertising. It's in their interest to send that out further because of the money that they make. And they're all trying to influence the true believers because they're the ones that are then going to believe it and then send things out themselves organically. Okay. And they're doing this for different purposes. Everybody has a different driver for why they want to get to the true believers. You want to do next gen amplifiers or shall I?
No, I think you should punch through.
I'll keep going? Okay. Very quickly, some broad categories of what is making this challenge more pronounced, okay? None of this should be a surprise to anyone. Things like generative AI have been in the conversation all week. Programmatic advertising might be something interesting that you haven't really thought about, but it is problematic in its ability to generate profits from any kind of information. It doesn't matter what it is, including, you know, you could have a site dedicated to cute cats and you can make programmatic advertising money out of it. Generative AI, of course, is really problematic because it allows you to amp up the volume, the speed, the scale, the accuracy of your content. It's much easier. Previously, Russia was doing campaigns where, you know, they were easier to spot because of some of the grammatical challenges that were, you know, and errors that were in their content. All of that's gone now. You can ask ChatGPT to do anything, and they are. And then micro-targeting. So that is basically using data analytics and geofencing to identify you as an individual and take you on a journey to influencing you and changing your mind about certain issues. And I think if you were to think about maybe your family or friend group or some of your colleagues, you might be able to identify somebody who in the last couple of years has shifted their view on certain things. We've seen a lot of that in the US lately, right? And so that's what this is about. This is micro-targeting using technology in order to influence people and to cause them to change their mind on all manner of topics. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Russ. This is for you.
Thank you. I will be punching through these iterated knots. We're quite keen to leave time for questions at the end. Does anyone recognize this model? Anyone work in cyber? This is quite a common model that cybersecurity people use called the diamond model, and it's usually used to deconstruct I guess, vanilla cyber attacks, part of the kill chain. Recorded Futures actually amended this to be used for cyber-enabled disinformation attacks. So the only thing that's changed is in red, and we actually, instead of having a victim perpetrator, we now have an influencer, an audience, and the payload that would be in the middle of the diamond is now a narrative. And if anyone wants to discuss how we use this, please do come and see me afterwards. I get kind of lonely otherwise. So we're going to go through 3 case studies, and we've specifically chosen commercial case studies because we think they'd be more relevant to the audience. And these are all real life. We're going to start off way back in a time, way before the internet, 1978 with McDonald's. For those people in the room that can't imagine a world without the internet, just think of your Wi-Fi being off for a while. I unfortunately can almost remember this time. McDonald's was subject to a rumor that they were using worm meat to supplement the beef in their burgers because they were saving money. Originally, this narrative was aimed at Wendy's, and then in 1978 bounced through Burger Chief, Burger King, and one other chain I can't remember. McDonald's was the natural target because they were the biggest fast food franchise in America at the time. So originally Wendy's got a whole load of phone calls to their Tennessee headquarters about worm meat content of their burgers, which they then instantly refuted in public and put an end to. McDonald's, their spokesman at the time was, I have to remember his name, Doug Twickenham, and he had a very unfortunate job, as we'll go on to quickly. His decision, when people started talking about McDonald's and worm meat in the burgers, decided to try and starve the narrative of its oxygen, ignore it in the hope that it would go away. within 3 months, McDonald's franchises across Tennessee and all of the surrounding states had reported about a 30% drop in revenue. So they were being affected by this word-of-mouth narrative spreading. Doug, in the end, decided to hold a press conference on national TV, and they did publicly refute this narrative, which addressed it to a certain degree. But as you can see, this has kind of recurred decades later. So the picture at the top right with the chicken nuggets, that was from BuzzFeed from last week. So this keeps coming back to McDonald's, and we talk a lot about attack surface in cyber. Your attack surface is all of your public-facing information, forums where anyone discusses your business and your reputation. McDonald's is particularly prone to this. So since that time, Doug himself, before he retired about 10 years ago, had to speak about the average number of cherries in a McDonald's cherry pie, the average number of hacksaw blades in a cherry pie from McDonald's, the use of coffee stirrers for people to snort cocaine off, which actually turned out to be true in the end, they had to remove those. The average lead content of their glasses, McDonald's have never used glasses, they've always had plastic or paper in the US. And my personal favorite, in the early 1980s, whether McDonald's were using their profits to fund a satanic cult in Seattle. So you can see they have to keep dealing with all this stuff. And arguably, this goes back to not acting quickly enough to actually quell some of these rumors. And that's the one thing that we really want to ram home today is you don't necessarily have to refute things yourself, but you've got to do something. And to do something, you have to know that this is going on. And in our next example, these people were unaware that they were the subject of a disinformation narrative until the folks at Mandiant did some absolutely fantastic work, and I can't speak highly enough of what they do. They actually had to inform Wayfair that people were saying that they were selling children inside their furniture. This comes hot on the heels of Pizzagate, for those people who remember that during COVID. And in 2020, in June, Wayfair, there were comments being made online that because of the price of their cabinets, and I'm not sure if you can see, but they were horribly, horribly overpriced, over $20,000 each sometimes, and the fact that they were named after children meant that they were selling children to the general public. What had happened was Wayfair are a big IKEA-like furniture seller. They have an algorithm that names their furniture products based on either girls' names or town names, and unfortunately they just had a whole load of girls' names together. And they are priced based on demand. So when there's a spike in demand, sometimes the algorithm goes a bit crazy and vastly overprices all this stuff. So you have this confluence of unfortunate events made worse by the fact that some of the girls' names matched missing persons reports in America. So QAnon did what QAnon did, backed by 8kun and 8chan. They spun up and they started to do their research online. They did stuff like they took the SKUs, the stock control units, from these items of furniture, and they put them into Yandex because Google's deep state, so you trust a Russian browser before you trust your own. And Yandex didn't find any of these. And what happened was Yandex came up with its stock photographs, its default photographs instead of pictures of the furniture. Unfortunately, they were pictures of girls' faces. So this just fed in and fed more fire into this rumor. You possibly can't see, there's a packet of pasta up there. So Amazon got sucked into this whole thing as collateral because they had very overpriced pasta online as well. And somebody commented, I actually cut it off because it seems so ridiculous. The top comment for this was, pasta is their code for pedophilia. So you have this absolutely ridiculous narrative spinning up, and it's being broadcast out onto social media and amplified as malinformation.
As malinformation by true believers.
Well-meaning people who just want to do the right thing. Wayfair's response was actually, in the first instance, similar to McDonald's, but they were quite clever unintentionally. This story was picked up by USA Today, and as a media outlet with a good, solid reputation and trust in America, they ran a piece about this ridiculous story about selling children in cabinets, and as a refutation on Wayfair's behalf, that actually probably did more good for Wayfair than them doing it themselves. So they effectively outsourced that refutation. So lastly, we've had McDonald's, no real technology involved. Wayfair, where we had technology involved and amateurs spreading rumors. And we go to our last case study, and this is probably the worst case scenario for anyone. This is professional disinformation practitioners, which we'll come on to, targeting a commercial entity using technology to back that and go viral. So Lynas Rare Earths, for anyone who's not following, they are a rare earth mining company based in Australia, and they do work in places like Malaysia, and they're opening mines in America as well. They came under attack by a group called Spamouflage, and if anyone hasn't heard of them, they're also known as Empire Dragon and Dragon Bridge. If you want to read about them, I've left some reports at the front there on the desks. They are a Chinese government entity with links to their intelligence departments and their military. They were originally created to attack Hong Kong pro-democracy groups back when Hong Kong was vying for independence and was taken back to China instead. And they have been used for a number of different roles. China has discovered that it can push other competitors out of the rare earths and I guess the mining market, the resources sector regionally, so that they can then dominate and have a monopoly for all of the chemicals they need to produce EVs, was basically it.
To add context to that, so China dominates with about 87-88% of the rare earths market. The second largest company is Lynas. It only has about 5%, but it is concerning enough that it's going to go after it.
So this is given that they are professional disinformation practitioners, this was a well-considered, orchestrated, and pretty sophisticated attack. They basically created a few thousand social media accounts claiming to be, as you can see in the top right, Malaysian locals who had become ill or were otherwise impacted by Lynas's mining there, and they claimed there was damage to the ecology around the mines as well, which was all disproved. And they also attacked Lynas, telling people not to invest in their shares, and they made life difficult for them in America with people claiming to be, as in fake accounts, claiming to be Texans opposed to the mine opening there as well, which actually couldn't have been further from the truth. They also, as you can see in the West Australian piece, started to attack the executive and other parts of Lynas as well. Lynas hasn't actually had, I believe, too sophisticated a response to this. They have put up an awful lot of statements on their website, but this goes back as far as 2019, which is when Mandiant first noticed that this was occurring. Even today, that West Australian article is quite recent and is almost certainly disinformation from Spamouflage. So this is your worst case scenario and something you need to be aware of. And also, the absolute red flag here is Lynas were completely unaware for years of this occurring, so they probably lost significant business because of that. It is still causing them problems now because they didn't act quickly enough.
Mm-hmm. Are you feeling like this? It's all a bit much, hey? But that's okay. Good news, everyone. I like my memes. Okay, good news. Why is it good news? Well, firstly, I'm an optimist at heart, so we can always figure things out. Good news because this is what's known as the knowledge curve or the competence curve, right? We have, in terms of physical security, done a great job where we've gone all the way through that curve to become unconsciously competent. What does that mean? It means we think about physical security, or we act on physical security without even thinking about it. For anyone who works in government or in secure spaces, if you know you go into a SCIF, you put your phone away. You don't take electronic devices into those facilities, right? That's an example of unconscious competence. In the cyber domain, I think we're probably in the conscious competence space, which means we're competent, but we're also really trying hard and thinking about it. We haven't gotten to that point where we're just unconsciously doing things where it's become habit, right? Things like your passwords, for example, is a great example of that. Disinformation and this whole information integrity landscape, I think we're not doing so good. We're probably moving from unconscious incompetence, where we don't even know what we don't know, through to conscious incompetence, which is a good move, actually. It just means that we now know that we don't know, right? And so this is why you're here. You're making the move on that curve. And so I say it's good news because we can continue to move through the curve to eventually get to the place where we're at in terms of physical security. And part of that is doing things like this. And this also. Action plan?
I'm going to absolutely rip through this, I think, if you're happy.
Yeah, go for it.
I do want to leave some time for questions at the end. We do have some analytical tools that practitioners can use for this that you can give to your security teams to use. But what I really want to talk about is your information ecosystem and how this fits into your broader sensor network. So everything that you should be doing as a larger entity or a smaller entity that is concerned about disinformation, if you are particularly subject to it, is build in automation for actionability and optionality of response as well. And I can't stress enough, this is a cyber threat for the most part. So you can use cyber tools to sense, analyze, and action against this. You do need to know what your attack surface is within the information domain. And what I mean by that is, where are people discussing your business? Where does your reputation lie? What are your critical business systems? And what kind of criticism are they subject to? Are you under particular legislation or legal concerns? Do you have vulnerabilities that are particular to you within your sector or you specifically as your company? And think McDonald's, if I can put people off eating your food, that's completely trashed your revenue for significant volumes of your company. So you need to know the context, you need to know the systems you have, and you need to know what people say about you. That gives you your baseline. That gives you an idea of what normal looks like for you within the information domain, and then we can start to sense variations in that may give you an indication. It won't necessarily point you to the exact content, but it will give you an indication that something is happening. And by that I mean, if your website normally gets 500 hits a day, and one day it gets 500,000 hits, you should probably start having a look on social media and start seeing what people are saying about you. In terms of sensing, I want to deal with other sensors first because some people don't actually consider this. So if anyone uses antivirus or endpoint detection here, we apply the same logic. So you can use telemetry from a lot of your systems to look at footfall on your website. You can look at hashtags, and especially if you have hashtags out there that you use for promoting yourself, and they have a sudden spike, potentially someone's hijacked that to associate with negative sentiment to attack you using disinformation. I will say as well, you need to be prepared, just like Amazon, to be collateral in someone else's disinformation campaign. So just because something doesn't make sense, don't discard it out of hand. I will say as well very quickly, horizon scanning for novel threats in the information environment has been very productive for some companies we've worked with. That's effectively red teaming, looking at yourself saying, this is what I see in the public domain about my company, this is what I would do, these are the pins I pull out to see if I can make the whole thing come down in terms of inserting disinformation or poison narratives into the information domain about you. And the main thing is just have the ability to see things happening. Don't be like the High Commission in PNG and put out a well-meaning, very good, feel-good article about how we're helping PNG with COVID, and the top comment is a disinformation campaign targeting the ADF and Australian government. And I don't have time to talk about this now. If you want to come and talk about this afterwards, it was actually my team that refuted this in reserves. I would be happy to take you through it. It's a fascinating example. Building into that, if you are beginning to sense things being pointed at you, be it a keyword search, be it a hashtag, footfall on your website, whatever, what do? How do you ingest that data? Remembering that you may be getting data from disparate sources such as your HQ asking why you're putting worm meat in your burgers. That would be your reception desk or your call center. All that needs to get fed into some kind of bucket that you can then, for anyone who saw Katie's amazing brief yesterday about applying military frameworks to complex problems, you need to reduce that complexity down to clarity so that you can give that to your C-suite for them to decide what to do. So you need to have pre-established communications methods, you need to have all that set in, and you need to be able to act on it quickly to produce a number of different options. I don't have time to explain the graphic here, but we've applied the diamond model to a disinformation attack in real life with a blended cyber element there as well. I have mentioned disinformation infrastructure, and I'm just winding up, Meg, I promise you. If you have a look at the Spamouflage report, what you will notice is a lot of these groups have the same structure as a cyber actor, an APT. Because of that, and because of all the infrastructure they rely on, the fact that they have to produce that automatically, you can attack that as defend forward. You can take that down, request for it to be taken down, and that will make your disinformation problems generally go away. That's our conjecture today. Meg, I'll let you wrap up.
Sure,
Thank you.
We're pretty much done. We just want to leave you with this quote about what's happening in the broad information environment. In 1597, Sir Francis Bacon coined the phrase or the quote, "Knowledge is power." Right, you remember that? Well, I think today, information is power, and that's what we need to walk away with. So, with that, thank you. This is us. Please come and chat. I think we'll probably go be at the Recorded Future stand over lunchtime. Just come say hi. I don't know if we have time for questions. We do.
Yeah, we have, oh, here we go. Hello. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. So if you do have the app, if you have a question, pop that in. Otherwise, I can run around. Any questions in the room?
I do have a quick pop quiz. I have a Recorded Future Challenge coin here for the first person that can tell me the only Australian government department that is allowed to broadcast anything on TikTok, and it refers to some recent events. No.
Nope.
Close.
Nope.
No.
I'm going to say ASD.
I can guess, but I shouldn't get the coin.
No.
It has to do with the election.
AEC?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, the Australian Electoral Commission. Yeah,
I'll leave that there for you.
well done.
Cool. So I do have a question, actually. So you went through disinformation, malinformation, misinformation. How would you categorize what we're seeing like happening in the US, where it's just a barrage of what would be normally considered disinformation or misinformation? And it's almost like a denial of service, because what you see is reporters consistently just scrambling to debunk it or fake, or you can say it's all fake or anything like that. Does that fall into any one of those categories?
Yeah, that's really interesting. It probably does. It probably falls into, the activity falls into probably all 3 categories. But what we're seeing there is what's called flooding the zone. And it's a phrase that that was coined by,
Bannon.
oh my God,
Steve Bannon.
Steve Bannon, thank you. The actual full phrase is flooding the zone with shit. And there it is again, I forgot to say that on stage. And what it's about is overwhelming the audience and overwhelming media with so much information that it's scrambling to catch up. This is also potentially one of the approaches that is taken, one of the methods that is used by state-sponsored, Russian-backed organisations in order to put so much out into the environment that you're overwhelming fact checkers with information so that they're distracted and can't focus on the things that you're actually trying to do.
It's a
fascinating time.
If I can, very briefly as well, you mentioned DDoS, we mentioned phishing, that sort of thing. Disinformation is just another attack vector. The objectives for it can be the same as DDoS, can be the same as phishing. It can be just to cause decision paralysis. So if you think of it as an attack vector, it's not an end unto itself. It's always for an objective.
Yeah. Fascinating. Like I could chat all day.
Come find us.
I will, definitely will. And anyone else that wants to come up, have a chat to them at the Recorded Future booth next door. Can we have a warm round of applause for Meg and Ross? Thank you.
Thank you.